Give this first and then we'll slip right out.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the closing plenary session of the 2000 NGA annual meeting. This morning, we'll be focusing on structural change in the new economy. And we'll hear from the utmost authority on this issue, Alan Greenspan, who is the chairman of the board of the Federal Reserve System. In addition, we will be undertaking the business of this meeting, considering proposed policy positions and recognizing our departing colleagues. We'll elect a new chairman, and so that this important association can continue. But before we do any of that, it is of importance, I think, to all of us that we have an opportunity to adequately thank our hosts, Governor Tom Ridge and the First Lady Michelle Ridge of the state of Pennsylvania, for the extraordinary hospitality that we have had and received by them, by the university, and by the staff and the community. Governor Ridge, we would like, on behalf of NGA, to make a presentation to you and to Michelle, if we could ask them to come forward. In the state of Utah, one of the things that we treasure is a large set of resources of genealogical histories. And as an expression of our appreciation to you, we have had an ancestral family history made up for both you and Michelle, dating back many generations. Now, this is dangerous for a political figure to know all about his background. So,
how many copies did you make?
Well, let me say there's only one copy, but it is on disc.
That's it.
And we want to express our deep appreciation to you and to Michelle for all that you have done to make our stay such a hospitable. Jackie, would you join me? We wanted to make this on behalf of the First Lady as well.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it very, very much. Thank you. That's all.
There are three actually thank yous that I would like to personally render. One is to the vice chairman of this association, Governor Glendening. We have worked very closely together during the last year. One of the things I value most about this association is the capacity for governors, both Democrat and Republican and independent, to work for the direct benefit of the states. And I would like to say, Governor Glendening, how much I have appreciated the remarkable way in which we've been able to work together for the good of the association and for the states, and how optimistic I am about your coming chairmanship and the good that you will do moving forward. Thank you very much. I would also quite briefly like to make two other recognitions of two members of the NGA executive team that have been particularly helpful to me during the course of the last year. I've also had family genealogical histories made up for Ray Shapak and Frank Schaffroth, and I'd like to ask Ray to come forward and receive this with an expression of my personal appreciation. I must say that finding family histories in small German communities is tough.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Frank, Colorado's easier. Thank you. One of the major questions that is debated within the economic discipline is, how is the new economy restructuring world economics? What changes are cyclical? Which ones of them are temporary? What changes are permanent? Which ones are new? Which ones are actually long-term trends? What about productivity? How much is it really increasing? Are diminishing returns on economics of scale obsolete concepts, or are they being replaced by the sheer explosion in innovations from open networks? The cost of one additional automobile and manufacturing plant may be several $1,000s. The cost of one program that's downloaded for a service may be zero. How do we balance those out looking forward? There's increasing evidence that the new economy is vastly different than the old economy, not only in the terms of growth, but also in the very nature of the business model that we follow, and the way in which wealth is created, and the way the goods are priced. With us today is Alan Greenspan, who, as all of you know, is the chairman of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. 2 weeks ago, he was reappointed to a fourth four-year term. He's now been designated as the chairman by Presidents Reagan and President Bush and Clinton. Dr. Greenspan has guided the United States economy over the largest economic expansion in the history of our country with great skill. Having been appointed by both Republicans and Democrats, both parties claim credit for that expansion, but no one doubts the fact that Dr. Greenspan deserves an enormous amount of that credit. Today we had the pleasure of, in our governor's only session, of having a candid and just remarkably interesting conversation. Bill Janklow said, "I haven't taken that many notes since I left college." The conciseness of his answers, the warmth and genuineness of his person, we all appreciate it very much. Dr. Greenspan, welcome today, and thank you for your remarks.
Thank you very much, Governor. I was getting somewhat concerned that my reputation for obscurity was going to be ruined. I can resurrect it rather easily, however. In any event, I'm delighted to be here, and I wish to join the Governor in thanking the university officials for their hospitality. It's been a delight to be here. And it's even more delightful on occasion to get away from Washington and my inbox, but regrettably I'll get back there. I'm especially pleased this morning to have the opportunity to meet with you and address the remarkable changes that have been occurring in our economy. The current economic expansion has not simply set a new record for longevity. More important, the recent period has been marked by a transformation to an economy that is more productive as competitive forces become increasingly intense and new technologies raise the efficiencies of our businesses. With the rapid adoption of information technology, the share of output that is conceptual rather than physical continues to grow. While these tendencies were no doubt in train in the old pre-1990s economy, they accelerated over the past decade as a number of technologies, with their roots in the cumulative innovations of the past half-century, began to yield dramatic economic returns. As governors of our states, you have all been dealing with the practical effects of these shifts, which not only have increased prosperity, but also are presenting important new challenges. The process of innovation, of course, is never-ending. Indeed, the substitution of physical capital in which new technologies are embodied for manual labor is an ongoing trend that began nearly 2 centuries ago, when work in craft shops shifted to factories and then to assembly lines. However, the development of the transistor after World War II appears in retrospect to have initiated a special wave of creative synergies. It brought us the microprocessor, the computer, satellites, and the joining of laser and fiber optic technologies. By the 1990s, these and a number of lesser but critical innovations had fostered an enormous new capacity to capture, analyze, and disseminate information. Indeed, it is the proliferation of information technology throughout the economy that makes the current period appear so different from preceding decades. This remarkable coming together of technologies that we label IT has allowed us to move beyond efficiency gains in routine manual tasks to achieve new levels of productivity in now routine information processing tasks that previously depended upon people to compute, sort, and retrieve information for purposes of taking action. As a result, information technologies have begun to alter significantly how we do business and create economic value, often in ways that were not foreseeable even a decade ago. One result of the more rapid pace of IT innovation has been a visible acceleration of the process that noted economist Joseph Schumpeter many years ago termed creative destruction, the continuous shift in which emerging technologies push out the old. Today, our capital stock is undergoing an increasing pace of renewal through investment of cash flow from older technology, capital equipment, and facilities into cutting-edge, more efficient vintages. This process of capital reallocation across the economy has been assisted by a significant unbundling of risks in capital markets made possible by the development of innovative financial products, many of which themselves owe their viability to advances in technology. At the microeconomic level, the essential contribution of information technology is the expansion of knowledge and its obverse, the reduction of uncertainty. Before this recent quantum jump in information availability, businesses had limited and less timely knowledge of customers' needs and of the location of inventories and materials flowing through complex production systems. In that environment, decisions were based on information that was hours, days, or even weeks old. Business to protect production schedules found it essential, although costly, to carry sizable backup stocks of materials and to keep additional persons on their payrolls for making the necessary adjustments to the inevitable miscalculations and unanticipated shifts in demand for their products and services. Of course, a great deal of imprecision persists, but the remarkable surge in the availability of real-time information has enabled businesses to reduce unnecessary inventory and dispense with labor and capital redundancies. Intermediate production and distribution processes, so essential when information and quality control were poor, are being bypassed or eliminated. There are no indications in the marketplace that the process of re-engineering business operations is slowing, although it has been difficult analytically to disentangle the part of the rise in output per hour that is permanent and that which is the consequence of transitory business cycle forces. The part based on information advances, of course, is irreversible. Having learned to employ barcode and satellite technologies, for example, we are not about to lose our capability in applying them. But until we experience an economic slowdown, we will not know for sure how much of the extraordinary rise in output per hour in the past 5 years is attributable to the irreversible way value is created, and how much reflects endeavors on the part of our business community to stretch existing capital and labor resources in ways that are not sustainable over the longer run. I've stressed technology's crucial role on the factory floor and in distribution channels. But technological innovation has spread far beyond that. Biotechnology is revolutionizing medicine and agriculture in ways that were unimaginable just a few years ago, with far-reaching consequences for the quality of life, not only in the United States, but also around the world. Even more intriguing are those as yet unrealized opportunities for computers and information technology to expand our scientific knowledge more generally. As I indicated earlier, the major contribution of advances in information technology and their incorporation into the capital stock has been to reduce the number of worker hours required to produce the nation's output, our proxy for productivity growth. Echoing a debate that is as old as Adam Smith, some view this so-called labor-displacing investment and the introduction of innovative production processes as a threat to our economy's capacity to create new jobs. But because technological change spawns so many opportunities for businesses to expand, the introduction of new efficiencies has today, as in the past, created a vibrant economy in which opportunities for new jobs and enterprises have blossomed. Another intriguing aspect of the recent wave of productivity acceleration is that U.S. businesses and workers appear to have benefited more from the recent advances in information technology than their counterparts in Europe or Japan. Those countries, of course, have also participated in this wave of invention and innovation, but they appear to have been slower to exploit it. The relative inflexible and hence more costly labor markets of these economies appear to be a significant part of the explanation. The elevated rates of return offered by the newer technologies in the United States are largely the result of a reduction in labor costs per unit of output. The rates of return on investment in the same new technologies are correspondingly less in Europe and Japan because businesses there face higher costs of displacing workers than we do. Here, labor displacement is more readily countenanced both in law and culture. Parenthetically, because our costs of dismissing workers are lower, the potential costs of hiring and the risks associated with expanding employment are less. The result of this significantly higher capacity for job dismissal has been counterintuitively a dramatic decline in the U.S. unemployment rate in recent years. But one less welcome byproduct of rapid economic and technological change and the necessary heightened level of potential job dismissal that goes with it is the evident insecurity felt by many workers despite the tightest labor markets in decades. This anxiety stems, I suspect, from a fear of job skill obsolescence, and one very tangible measure of it is the pressure on our education and training systems to prepare and adapt workers to effectively run the new technologies. These pressures are likely to remain intense, even though they may wax and wane, because I see nothing to suggest that the trends towards a greater conceptual content of our nation's output, and thus towards increased demand for conceptual skills in our workforce, will end. The rapidity of innovation and the unpredictability of the directions it may take imply a need for considerable investment in human capital. Even the most significant advances in information and computer technology will produce little additional economic value without human creativity and intellect. The heyday when a high school or college education would serve a graduate for a lifetime is gone. Basic credentials by themselves are not enough to ensure success in the workplace. Today's recipients of diplomas expect to have many jobs and to use a wide range of skills over their working lives. Their parents and grandparents look to a more stable future even if in reality it often turned out otherwise. Workers must be equipped not simply with technical know-how, but also with the ability to create, analyze, and transform information and to interact effectively with others. Moreover, learning will increasingly be a lifelong activity. Certainly, the notion that human and physical capital are complements is not new. Technological advance has inevitably brought with it improvements not only in the capital inputs used in production, but also new demands on workers who must interact with that increasingly more complex stock of capital. Early in this century, these advances required workers with a higher level of cognitive skills, for instance, the ability to read manuals, to interpret blueprints, or to understand formula. Our educational system responded. In the 1920s and 1930s, high school enrollment in this country expanded rapidly, pulling youth from rural areas where opportunities were limited into more productive occupations in business and broadening the skill of students to meet the needs of an advancing manufacturing sector. It became a job of these institutions to prepare students for work life, not just for a transition to college. In the context of the demands of the economy at that time, a high school diploma represented the training needed to be successful in most aspects of American enterprise. The economic returns for having a high school diploma rose, and as a result, high school enrollment rates climbed. At the same time, our system of higher education was also responding to the advances in economic processes. Although many states had established land-grant schools earlier, their support accelerated in the late 19th century as those whose economies specialized in agriculture and mining sought to take advantage of new scientific methods of production. Early in the 20th century, the content of education at an American college had evolved from a classically based curriculum to one combining the sciences, empirical studies, and modern liberal arts. Universities responded to the need for the application of science, particularly chemistry and physics, to the manufacture of steel, rubber, chemicals, drugs, petroleum, and other goods requiring the newer production technologies. Communities looked to their institutions of higher learning for leadership in scientific knowledge and for training of professionals such as teachers and engineers. The scale and scope of higher education in America was being shaped by the recognition that research, the creation of knowledge, complemented teaching and training, the diffusion of knowledge. In a global environment in which prospects for economic growth now depend importantly on a country's capacity to develop and apply new technologies, our universities are envied around the world. The payoffs in terms of the flow of expertise, new products, and startup companies, for example, have been impressive. Here, perhaps the most frequently cited measures of our success have been the emergence of significant centers of commercial innovation and entrepreneurship, where creative ideas flow freely between local academic scholars and those in industry. Not all that long ago, it was easy to recite a relatively short list of places where these activities were clustered. But we have witnessed in recent years a great multiplicity of these centers of innovation. State support, both for the university system and for small businesses, has been an important element in the vitality of these centers. Certainly, if we are to remain preeminent in transforming knowledge into economic value, the U.S. system of higher education must remain the world's leader in generating scientific and technological breakthroughs, and in preparing workers to meet the evolving demands for skilled labor. With 2/3 of our high school graduates now enrolling in college, and an increasing proportion of adult workers seeking opportunities for retooling, our institutions of higher learning increasingly bear an important responsibility for ensuring that our society is prepared for the demands of rapid economic change. Equally critical to our investment in human capital is the quality of education in our elementary and secondary schools. As you know, the results of international comparisons of student achievements in mathematics and science, which indicated that performance of U.S. 12th grade students fell short of their peers in other countries, heightened the debate about the quality of education below the college level. To be sure, substantial reforms in math and science education have been underway for some time, and I am encouraged that policymakers, educators, and the business community recognize the significant contribution that a stronger elementary and secondary education system will make in boosting the potential productivity of new generations of workers. I hope that we will see that the efforts to date have paid off in raising the achievement of U.S. students when the results of the 1998-1999 international comparisons for 8th graders are published. Whatever the outcome, the pressures to advance our education system will continue to be intense. As the conceptual share of the value added in our economic processes expands further, the ability to think abstractly will be increasingly important across a broad range of professions. Critical awareness and the abilities to hypothesize, to interpret, and to communicate are essential elements of successful innovation in a conceptual-based economy. As with many skills, such learning is most effective when it is begun at an early age. And most educators believe that exposure to a wide range of subjects, including literature, music, art, and languages, plays a considerable role in fostering the development of these skills. As you know, school districts are also being challenged to evaluate how new information technologies can be best employed in their curricula. Unfortunately, this goal has too often been narrowly interpreted as teaching students how to type on the computer or permitting students to research products over the internet. Incorporating new technologies into the educational process is indeed likely to be an important element in improving our schools, but it must involve more than simply wiring the classroom. Human capital in the form of our teachers and technology are complements in producing education output just as they are in other business activities. To achieve the most effective outcome from new technologies, we must provide teachers with the necessary training to use them effectively and to provide forums for teachers and education researchers to share ideas and approaches on how best to integrate technology into the curriculum. And we must create partnerships among the states, the school systems, labor, and industry to develop appropriate standards and guidelines for the teaching of information technology in the classroom. A crucial concern today, and I know that the National Governors Association is working hard to address this issue, is that the supply of qualified teachers will be insufficient to meet the demand. Indeed, a substantial number of teachers are scheduled to retire over the next decade, and how to replace them and meet the additional demand from rising enrollments is certain to be a significant challenge in the years ahead. Finally, the pressure to enlarge the pool of skilled workers also means that we must strengthen the significant contributions of other types of training and educational programs, especially for those with lesser skills. It is not enough to create a job market that has enabled those with few skills to finally grasp the first rung of the ladder to achievement. More generally, we must ensure that our whole population receives an education that will allow full and continuing participation in this dynamic period of American economic history. We need to foster a flexible education system, one that integrates work and training and that serves the needs both of experienced workers at different stages in their careers and of students embarking on their initial course of study. Community colleges, for example, have become important providers of job skills training, not just for students who may eventually move on to a four-year college or university, but for individuals with jobs, particularly older workers seeking to retool or retrain. The increasing availability of courses that can be taken at a distance, so to speak, over the internet means that learning can more easily occur outside the workplace or the classroom, an innovation that may be particularly valuable for states with large rural populations for whom access to traditional classroom learning is more difficult. In summary, we are in a period of rapid innovation that is bringing with it enormous opportunities to enhance living standards for a large majority of Americans. Our ability to take advantage of these opportunities is not only influenced by national policies, but is also determined importantly at the state level. States with more flexible labor markets, skilled workforces, and a reputation for supporting innovation and entrepreneurship will be prime locations for firms at the cutting edge of technology. Not all new enterprises will succeed, of course, but many will, and those that do will provide the impetus for further economic progress and expanding opportunities in their communities. Your leadership as policymakers will be a key element in promoting an environment in which you join with others in business, labor, and education to realize the potential that technological change has for bringing substantial and lasting benefits to our economy. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being with you this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Greenspan. Your comments were obviously thought-provoking and very helpful, and on a subject of great interest and importance to all of us as governors. We have enjoyed very much having your presence here today. The nature of Dr. Greenspan's work obviously makes it difficult for him to take questions, and therefore he will not be today. But we want you to know how much we appreciate your presence, and thank you again. We will now move to the committee report and the consideration of our business today. Dr. Greenspan, thank you again.
Thank you again, everybody. It's good to
We'll now begin to adopt the proposed policy positions alphabetically by committee, with the Executive Committee being last. These policies were originally sent to all of you on the 23rd of June. The packet reflects the policies as they've been proposed with amendments by the standing committees. They require a two-thirds vote of those present and voting. Now, to expedite the matters, I'd like to ask each chairman of a committee to move all of the committee policies in block. And I'd like to begin with Chairman Hodges of the Committee on Economic Development and Commerce. Governor Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We approved 4 policies dealing with marine and air transportation, telecommunications, and employment security, and 1 resolution supporting efforts to modernize insurance regulation, and we submit them to the full membership for adoption.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on those matters? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Those are adopted. We'll now move to Governor Huckabee, the chairman of the Committee on Human Resources. Governor Huckabee.
Mr. Chairman, the Committee on Human Resources met yesterday, and we talked about how states can take care of the least empowered citizens in our communities. One of the key factors that we looked at was a very important discussion with Representative Nancy Johnson, chair of the House Human Resources Committee. She complimented governors for their role in helping to bring about perhaps the only significant successful program in the history of America in terms of a social program, and that is welfare reform. And she properly paid tribute to the governors for having done that. As most of us all are painfully aware, the TANF reauthorization is coming before Congress in the coming months. And she has urged us, and let me perhaps say challenged us, to do something that it is in our best interest to do. And let me bring this to the attention of my colleagues. It is very important that we meet individually with the members of our congressional delegations and encourage them for the reauthorization of TANF, because there are many issues unresolved about what they might do in the reauthorization process. One of the suggestions that came forth from our meeting was the idea of actually asking our senators and our congressional representatives to meet with us for press opportunities in the specific districts where we have successful programs. One of the things that we have to acknowledge as governors is that we may have taken all the credit for having accomplished welfare reform, but the truth is we couldn't have done it without the partnership of our congressional delegations in giving us this flexibility and freedom to begin with. And it is really in the best interest of our citizens, not so much ours, but of our citizens, that we make sure that our congressional delegation understand the successes we've had and their role in having made those successes by having given us that authorization, and that we urge the continuation of the authorization and the continuation of the level of funding plus inflation. And the best way we can do that is to do this one-on-one rather than just wholesale assuming they're going to hear our message. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to encourage my colleagues. We will be sending a letter from the committee as well outlining this proposal. So we'd like to make that in the form of announcement. The committee would like to recommend the consideration of 2 new policy positions, 2 new resolutions, and amendments to 9 existing policy positions, 1 which is in the form of a substitute. And Mr. Chairman, I move the adoption of these new policies and policy changes in block.
You've heard a motion, heard a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The committee report is adopted. Now go to Governor Vilsack.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Governor Thompson.
Before you get off the subject, Governor Huckabee was absolutely correct, and Congresswoman Nancy Johnson suggested very strongly that we set up a subcommittee or some sort of a committee from the NGA to start working in January on the reauthorization. And all of us that have been through it before know how important that is. And I just would like to reiterate what Mike has indicated and what Nancy's indicated, that we should have a committee ready to go in January with the new Congress for the reauthorization of TANF and make sure that the funding is the same, and to look for opportunities, which she strongly encouraged us, for ways in which we might be able to expand the program to help the working poor, and at the same time not supplant state programs with federal dollars. But I think it's one that's vitally important, and I just would like to reiterate and encourage the new executive board or the new chairman and vice chairman coming in to set up that committee.
It seems almost inconceivable that much time could have gone since we went through that the first time. It's been we've made great progress, but it's Governor Engler.
I certainly agree with that. That it does seem impossible that the time has come already for the newer governors. The one thing that probably needs to be looked at in your respective states, I think, is to what extent there are TANF balances, period, and what's being planned with those, but also we'll be coming up on that 5-year lifetime limit too, and how that's structured is real important. And these are all things that will get caught up in any reauthorization. It's just inevitable that they will, as well as the Title 20, the Children's Services block, which has been kind of consistently trimmed back each year, and we've lost some ground with flexibility and actual aggregate dollar amount over the time of the program. And I think some of those things, and the staff really needs to be looking at this. Reauthorization debate will be coming at a time when many of the legislatures, and particularly those who've got the legislatures meet only once every 2 years, it'll be happening during that time. So we need the input in early.
Thank you. In many states, they have actually imposed on themselves limits that are shorter than 5 years, and there are many states now who have been through that. And for those of you who are just moving toward it, it's an experience worth learning from. Any other comments on this matter? If not, let's go to Governor Vilsack, who is Vice Chairman of the Committee on Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of Governor Gwynn, I submit the following report on the Committee of Natural Resources. We had the opportunity yesterday to engage in a discussion about two important national issues: the conservation of private agricultural land and abandoned coal and hard rock mines. Two practitioners, a farmer from Iowa and a rancher from Wyoming, who both implement conservation practices every day on their farms and ranches, shared with us their views on the subject. We also heard an informative presentation on the environmental and public safety dangers from abandoned mines, both coal and hard rock. We appreciate Governor Ridge's willingness to spend time, notwithstanding his busy schedule, where he stressed the need for full distribution of the revenues that are held in the Abandoned Mine Fund. Sylvia Baca from the Department of the Interior shared her views about the fund, and Alan Corner from Nevada described what their state is doing to rehabilitate abandoned hard rock mines. Several governors on the committee also urged their colleagues to lobby their senators, specifically regarding the CARA legislation, to urge that it be favorably reported out of the Senate Energy Committee next week. At the conclusion of our meeting, Mr. Chair, the committee recommended amendments to 3 existing policy positions, 1 reaffirmation of an existing policy, and 1 resolution. Those recommendations were forwarded to you and to the body as a whole for your consideration, were unanimously adopted by the committee, and I move their adoption in total and en bloc.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion carries. The committee report is adopted. This time I'd like to ask for a motion to move the Executive Committee policy on public pay and pension plans, which was earlier distributed. The Executive Committee has already adopted this as a statement of interim policy. It now requires the affirmation of the entire body. Is there a motion to approve or to ratify this interim policy? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of ratifying the previously passed policy, say aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. It is affirmed. That concludes the resolutions portion of our business. May I just say that there is, I suspect, no group of people who know any better than those of us who serve in this job the demands of this job and also the rewards, particularly when it's going well. Today we have 4 departing governors that we choose and would like to recognize and honor today because of the things that they have done to improve the value of their states, to enhance the nature of this country. Each of them leaves behind a record, a legacy of achievements, both in their states, and they have so honorably served both as state leaders and as national leaders on a myriad of topics and issues. I feel a particular kinship to these as being one of the rookie 9 that joined in 1992 as we gathered in Colorado Springs to begin this adventure. Those are moments that I don't suspect any of us will ever forget. Mark Roscoe and Pedro Rosello, Ed Schaefer, and Tom Carper, I'd like to just express to you personally, on my own behalf as well as on Jackie's, the deep respect that we hold for you and your spouses, the delight with which we have savored every moment of our service together, and the anticipation that we have for the future on friendships that will endure forever. I'd like to ask one at a time if each of you would come forward with your First Lady, and we would like to make a small presentation to you as a remembrance of our affection and the great sense of kinship we feel to you. Perhaps we could begin with Governor Schaefer, and Nancy, could you come forward? And I'd like to ask Governor Thompson if you would make some parting remarks recognizing their great service.
Well, thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman, and you certainly summarized it as adequately as anybody can about the greatness of these wonderful governors who have served their states so well, but served this organization just as ably. Ed Schaefer, it's a privilege for me to say a few words about you and your lovely bride, Nancy, because you are truly a delightful couple, and you make us very proud to be associated with you. Ed Schaefer is finishing his second term as North Dakota's governor, being not only the first Republican governor to win a second four-year term in that state, but getting 67% of the popular vote in doing so. And that really is remarkable. I can remember coming to the North Dakota Republican Convention when you were a candidate speaking for you and at the convention, and your mother telling me that, don't worry, Ed's going to win. And I thought that was probably a little biased on her part, but she certainly predicted that, and it was a pleasure meeting you then, and it's always been a pleasure to meet you ever since. Ed has promoted a very aggressive program of economic development in North Dakota. He has been able to produce a vibrant economy that sees record low unemployment, and yes, a 10% increase in the number of jobs by lowering unemployment insurance tax and workers' compensation rates. And Ed made that a centerfold of his campaign. He also being a very successful entrepreneur in his own right before he became governor, and he carried through and continued in that as governor. This wonderful economic prosperity in North Dakota has enabled a significant growth in funding for education, a 30% increase in funding for K through 12, and a 21% increase for higher education. Elderly care programs, as well as in infrastructure investments in technology and water development projects to extend that prosperity to all areas of North Dakota and to all of their citizens. And yes, all of this, ladies and gentlemen, without a general tax increase for the last 6 years. Ed has also been a true leader on a regional and a national scale. He's past chairman of the Western Governors Association, the Midwestern Governors Association, and currently very ably chairs the Republican Governors Association. Here at NGA, he has been an involved participant in many different subject areas, held many positions. He co-led the governor on agriculture for the past 2 years, a long-serving member on the Natural Resources Committee, serving as its vice chair in 1998 as well as in 1999, past vice chair of the Committee on Economic Development and Commerce, and co-chair of our Transportation Task Force, which was probably the most successful in Washington when he did that. And we all are in your debt for that because we finally were able to get some needed federal dollars for our infrastructure. Ed, on behalf of all of us, and me personally, we thank you for all of that service to our nation, to North Dakota, to the NGA, to the Republicans, and we wish you and your lovely wife, Nancy, all of the best. And on top of that, both of them ride Harley-Davidson motorcycles, so you got to realize they're great Americans and great citizens and great friends, and we congratulate you and thank you.
Governor Rossello and MAGA, could you come forward? I'd like to call on Governor Patton to recognize the good governor and First Lady from Puerto Rico.
Pedro and Marga, on behalf of all of the governors, thank you so much for all of the things that you have done for your people and for our country and for this association and for us as individuals. I remember very well the summer meeting in Puerto Rico in '96 when Judy and I first became actively associated with this group, and as new to the group, your personal hospitality and your professional hospitality certainly helped us make that transition, and we certainly personally appreciate it. I've had the opportunity to visit Puerto Rico 3 times since then, and your continued hospitality is very, very much appreciated. And having talked with your people, I recognize how well liked and respected that you are. Efforts at health care, when I guess something like half of your people had health care insurance available 8 years ago when you went into office, now that's virtually 100%. That is truly amazing, something that I know that every governor at this table would hope that they could emulate by the end of their term. Your emphasis on education, again, is truly remarkable, and your realization that, in fact, jobs are vital to the success of your people, and you've developed the lowest unemployment rate in Puerto Rico in many, many years, and you've done all of these things while, I understand, decreasing the tax burden on the working part of your population by almost 50%. Certainly, you have done an outstanding job. Your emphasis on integrating English into the language of your territory is very helpful in hopefully one day making it a full partner in this great country. And your efforts on that task have really been monumental, and I pray that one day that dream will also be realized. So your active leadership with us has truly been amazing, not just with NGA and the many task forces and projects that you've worked with us on, from welfare reform to the fatherhood issue to other things, have been very, very admirable. But working with us in leadership of the Council of State Governments, headquartered in my home state, and in the Southern Governors Association, and in the Democratic Governors Association. Your leadership of those groups and the opportunity to work with you in those endeavors have been very, very personally rewarding. And I know the same goes for all of the members of this association. So for Judy and myself and for all the governors and their spouses, thank you so much for having had the opportunity to just know 2 of the most genteel people that we've ever had the pleasure. Good luck to both of you.
Governor Roscoe, would you come forward? We'd like to honor you. And I've asked Governor Janklow if he would speak on our behalf.
He knows it all. Janklow knows a lot here.
Yesterday we were in a meeting and Governor Janklow walked in. Mark Roscoe leaned over to me and said, "Uh-oh."
You know, Mark, as a neighbor, but something more importantly as a friend, I look across the border over the last several years, and I watch you as the chief executive of Montana. You know, all of us that are in politics would like to think that everybody likes us or should like us. You're a gentleman who, when you sought re-election in 1996, 80% of the voters in your state returned you to office. By far, the highest victory margin in the history of the state of Montana. Probably comes close to setting a national record in contested elections in the modern era. But 80% of the citizens, Democrats, independents, Republicans that went to the polls, re-elected you. They re-elected you for a reason. They re-elected you because they realized that they had to entrust to somebody their lives, their liberty, and their property. And they had to entrust those things to someone who would exercise executive judgments in such a way that they wouldn't have to worry about those kinds of issues. You're a gentleman that inherited a state in deficit. As a matter of fact, in a small state, population-wise like Montana, by 1993, if I recall, it had grown to approximately $200 million in shortfall in your economy. By 1995, you'd turn that into a $22 million surplus. Literally a $220 million, almost a $250 million turnaround in your state, and return that money to the taxpayers of Montana. Deeply involved in what I'll call traditional issues. All governors get involved in things like workman's compensation, where you were a leader in your state, welfare reform, 50 states and territories all work together doing welfare reform. You set a national example in the things that you were able to do in Montana. But really, my friend Mark, you're not going to be remembered for those things. You're going to be remembered because you did, in fact, make a difference. That's why you're going to be remembered. You're a man who has always understood that none of us as adults have ever grown so tall that we can't kneel down to help a child, that we can't do what we can do to make sure that every child has an equal opportunity in life. You were the first president, chairman of the board for Jobs for America's Graduates. Very recently, President Clinton has appointed you to the board of directors for the Corporation for National Service. So although you didn't have to do those things, you had to do the other things, you took the time to do the extra things to make sure that the young people of America had the kind of chances in life that you feel that you've had. And if you really want to know the measure of somebody in this era where we live, where everybody is kind of self-grandizingly important, or at least thinks they're important, go to someone's neighborhood and ask their neighbors what they think of them. When you were reelected by 80% of the vote in Montana, your neighbors in that state, the people of that state, told America what they thought of Mark Roscoe. And your achievements, your caring about people, the integrity that you brought to your office, the candor, a man who every meeting he ever holds, and all the governors, I gotta believe he's the only one, there is no meeting that he conducts that isn't open to the press. Even the private, most deliberative discussions that he has as a governor are open to the press. You've brought such openness to your government. You've brought such candor to your government. You've really brought refreshment in a time in America when so many people criticize aspects that we have of democracy. And so, my friend, we're going to miss you, but you've set an example. You've really set an example for all of us on that ladder of public service that all of us hope to achieve during our remaining times. As they say, hasta a la vista, sayonara, auf Wiedersehen, or we'll see you later.
My friend Tom Carper, would you come forward? I don't think she had to depart, I think, early, didn't she?
She went back to work.
I'm sorry for that.
At DuPont Company.
I'd like you to envision some years ago a young Air Force officer who returned home to Delaware, decided he was going to devote himself to public service.
Navy.
Navy. Excuse me. A young Navy officer decided he would come back and devote himself to public service. No one thought he had a chance. He ran for state treasurer and won, and was elected, I think, 5 times, beginning a run of 10 times being elected statewide in the state of Delaware. I don't know how a person could either be more significant to a state's history than that, or for that matter, more beloved by the citizens. Elected to 5 terms of Congress, twice now as governor. Looking back over his time as governor, it will be easy to pick out his plentiful accomplishments. Overhauling, literally overhauling the state's education system. Not only overhauling Delaware's welfare system, but playing an absolutely essential role as the lead governor of NGA during a period of welfare reform, leading the fight in Congress for us all to be able to have welfare returned to the states, and then using that tool to literally streamline and completely change for the better the system in the state of Delaware, strengthening families against the challenges that they face today, specifically focusing on reducing teen pregnancy, improving every aspect of life in Delaware. Now, here's an accomplishment that I think is remarkable. When he began working 25 years ago in the state of Delaware as the state treasurer, they had, at that time, a credit rating that was the worst in the nation, to now it is a AAA bond rating, the best possible bond rating. That is a remarkable achievement, Governor, and one that you bear responsibility and some satisfaction, I am sure. He was the chairman of the NGA. His theme was Smart Kids for Our Future. We all focused under his tutorship on education accountability, on expanding learning opportunities, and harnessing information technology. The person you see in front of you, while not solely responsible, I believe that EdFlex would not have happened were it not for his continual efforts in Congress as chairman of this organization. He was relentless in the latter days of that session, being on the floor, being in the offices, being on the phone, calling all of us, spurring us on to better and greater things to make this happen. We owe a great debt of both appreciation and admiration for what you have done as NGA chairman. During the time that he was the chairman of this organization, we were recognized as one of the most effective organizations in Washington. Tom, I was the vice chairman during the time that you were chairman, and therefore I have particular appreciation for it, for your effectiveness. But I also came to understand in direct ways your kindness. I think if anyone were to say, what is it that personifies Tom Carper, they would say he is just such a kind, genuine person. My children have observed that, and I'm grateful that they had a chance to see that directly with you. We honor as well today your great spouse, Martha, who served as the head of the spouses organization of the NGA. A remarkable person, and it's so remarkable that, as I remember the story, the first night that Tom met her, he decided she was the one. It took her a while to convince Martha, but I think he made that decision right off the bat. And the first time I met her, I could see exactly why. So Tom, with our great appreciation, our admiration, our affection, and looking forward, I understand that you have no intention of stopping here in your public service. And we look forward to working with you in future capacities and maintaining long and fruitful friendships. Governor Carper, it appears that we're going to call on you for some brief remarks on the Education Clearinghouse at this time. Did you know about that?
I'm happy to. I'll take just a minute.
We'll make them brief then.
Very, very briefly. First, I just want to say to Mike Levitt, thank you very much for those wonderful, wonderful, kind remarks. I only hope, back in Ashland, Kentucky, Paul, I hope my mother was watching. Oh, God. One of the things that we've worked on as governors together is trying to raise student achievement. In every one of our states, there's a school, maybe a school district, which is doing wonderful things in infusing technology into the classroom and to bring the rest of the world into the classroom, make learning exciting, interesting. And if we knew how they were doing it, if we knew how they were enabling their teachers to use that technology, we would all benefit in our states. Somebody in one of the schools of the governor sitting around this table, we got somebody who's figured out a great way to reduce disruptive behavior in our classrooms. And if the rest of us knew how that was happening, we could replicate that in our own states. Somebody's schools around the table, somebody's figured out how to reduce absenteeism, truancy on the part of kids, to increase the learning capability. Somebody's figured out how to compensate teachers in ways that reward the best and brightest and attract the best and brightest. And if the rest of us knew how that was happening, we could do that in our states. Later this fall, we will bring online, I put up on the web, a site that we can all visit. Not just governors staff, not just our departments of education, not just our school districts, superintendents, or teachers. They can all access it. But so can average citizens, business leaders, parents, to find out what's working around the country to raise student achievement in, whether it's in Puerto Rico, whether it's in South Dakota, Wisconsin, you name it. And it's part of the Center for Best Practices. And I'm just grateful to everybody who's worked hard to make it a part of the center, the clearinghouse. One of the great things that we do as governors is we steal ideas from each other, don't we? And in fact, that in first new governor school that I attended with Ed and with Mark and others, Pedro and others around the table, that was the thing that struck me most about the NGA. Here's an outfit that really wants to help all of us get the best ideas and use them. And this Education Clearinghouse, which is being sponsored by a number of our corporate citizens, will go online later this year and will really be a legacy for all of us to enjoy, to benefit from, and to help our kids. To everybody who's worked on it, I just want to say a real special thank you, and for giving me the chance to be the chairman of not just this organization, but for the last year, the chairman of the Center for Best Practice. I really want to say thanks. And to Martha, who's back at work running the DuPont Company. Our boys are off at Boy Scout camp today and can't be here. We thank you all for the privilege of serving with you. We love you.
Thank you, Governor. The chair recognizes Governor Engler for a brief set of remarks on the Entrepreneurship Academy of States.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just say that it's been a delight to be in an entrepreneurial state like Pennsylvania under the able leadership of Tom Ridge these past few days. And during these days, of course, this conference, and I think the focus, Mr. Chairman, some of the work that you and Governor Glendening have done to bring in front of us a lot about the new economy and the new economic environment in which we're all governing. And as we've talked about that and thought about it, and certainly Chairman Greenspan's remarks this morning were most appropriate to this whole topic. It's pretty clear the engine of America's new economy is fueled by these entrepreneurs who are developing new wealth, creating new jobs, and generating greater economic activity in communities across the land. And I think governors have a great deal to learn about how we sort of feed these engines of prosperity and what additionally can be done to turn them loose in some of the less prosperous areas of our respective states. And Governor Levitt, you had announced at the winter meeting that the NGA Center for Best Practices would have the support of the Kauffman Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership. Kauffman Center based in Kansas City, Missouri, and this center is going to convene a policy academy for states to assist them in studying and strengthening their economic development and education policies, all designed to encourage entrepreneurial activity and growth. And the goal of the Policy Academy is to provide governors in these states and their teams really an opportunity to build a focused policy initiative that are around these strategies of encouraging and supporting entrepreneurs with the assumption that is a very key component of economic development and of growth. And we had a lot of interest from governors, a lot of response, and in part because of the response, because of the interest, we actually the Kauffman Center was kind enough to come up with a few extra dollars and expand the universe. So the following teams have been invited, and they will meet in the first of two Academy work sessions this fall, and these are pretty intensive little sessions that everybody had to commit to participate in. And the bottom line after that's all done is the center then will host a national forum on entrepreneurship be next year, and the purpose of that is to share the outcomes and the best practices with all states. And hopefully the national forum then inspires state and local leaders, engages everybody in a national dialogue, and that would then assist us in building necessary 21st century entrepreneurial capacity. So here are the teams: Idaho, Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Nevada, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming. And they'll be getting to work. And we again want to just thank the Kauffman Center for entrepreneurial leadership for their leadership. And that center was put together in 1992 by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, and we're just delighted that they're now a partner with the NGA Center for Best Practices in all of these states. And I look forward to seeing this project completed during my tenure as chair of the NGA Center for Best Practices. So the 10 states will be right at it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Governor. During the past 4 days, Penn State University has been standing on its toes in readiness for our visit. Today with us is Chairman Junker and President Spanier. Would you please stand and allow us to thank you for the I now call on Governor Almond, who will issue an invitation formally for the 2001 NGA annual meeting in Rhode Island.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Marilyn and I want to join you in thanking Tom and Michelle Ridge and Penn State for their great hospitality for this meeting. It's really been a wonderful experience. You've given me a tough act to follow. But let me tell you, next summer we're going to be hosting Governor Glendening and his lovely wife Frances and all of you in Rhode Island, the Ocean State, and it will be a day at the beach. We've been working hard at it. If you like tennis, we have the International Tennis Hall of Fame. We have the Jazz Festival, which is, of course, famous, the Folk Festival. We have sailing. You'll be at the sailing capital of the world, Newport, Rhode Island. You can sail on an America's Cup Challenger. I've done it. It's spectacular. You go to Block Island. You can go to our wonderful beaches. It'll be truly a great, great conference. So I would urge all of you to come, bring your families. If you'd like to have an extended stay, please let us know as early as possible. We are a tourist attraction, so things can get busy there. But I know you'll have a great time, and we really, really are going to look forward to hosting you next August in the Ocean State. So come on and come early. Thank you. Thank you.
Yesterday I had the privilege of imparting my final remarks, so today I will simply tell all of you, but most specifically the NGA staff, how much I have appreciated and valued this experience. I would say that I have grown personally from it. My admiration for you has expanded, and my impression and understanding of the importance of this organization as the best, I believe, and most important spokes organization for the institution of the American state. I believe during the course of the year we have truly outlined an agenda to strengthen the American state in the new economy. With that, I would now like to call on Governor Rosao for a report of the nominating committee for for the year 2000-2001.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The nominating committee respectfully recommends that the following governors serve on the executive committee for 2000-2001. Governor Mike Huckabee of Arkansas, Governor Thomas Carper of Delaware, until the conclusion of his term, to be succeeded then by Governor Ronnie Musgrove of Mississippi, Governor Dirk Kempthorne of Idaho, Governor Paul Patton of Kentucky, Governor Michael Leavitt of Utah, Governor Howard Dean of Vermont, and Governor Tommy Thompson of Wisconsin, Governor John Engler of Michigan as Vice Chairman, and Governor Paris Glendening of Maryland as Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the report of the nominating committee.
Before I call that to a vote, I recognize there is one thank you I have neglected, and that is Joanne Newman. Joanne, would you please stand? The extended nature of that applause will make clear indication to you, I believe, Joanne, that you have gained and earned not just our affection, but our great respect. And no one will be more glad to see this over than her. Having made that, may I say you've heard the governor's and the nominating committee's report and motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The committee's report is adopted. Congratulations, Governor Glendening. May I point out that the trains arrived ahead of schedule and under budget.
I'm going to say a few words before I call you up, even though I mentioned John. Mike, thank you very much. Let me first, if I might, present my wife, Frances Ann, who most of you know and who many people swear I'm only here because of her. But Frances Ann has been a leader in her own rights in children's health and women's health issues, as well as the arts. Frances Ann. Let me also thank my departing colleagues for all of their service to this association. I've enjoyed so much working with you and will miss you. And special recognition to Tom Carper, who's not only been a colleague here, but my neighboring state all the time I've been governor, and it's just been of great help to me. And Tom, thank you, and all of the colleagues here as well. My very first order of business as new chair of the NGA is to honor our most recent chair, and it's a great pleasure to do that. I have the privilege of presenting the traditional commemorative gavel, which I will read, but I'm asking you to stay seated for a moment, if I might. And this says, presented to Michael O. Leavitt, Governor of Utah, for his outstanding leadership as Chairman of the National Governors Association 1999 to 2000 on the occasion of the 92nd NGA Annual Meeting, July 11, 2000. Now, having said that, let me also note, if there's an award for an understatement, I think I've just earned it, because I do not believe that simply saying this is outstanding leadership begins to describe what Mike has meant to the NGA, to us as governors, to our states, and to the citizens of the state. Mike, 1 year ago, I remember clearly you challenged us to change the way we do business as an organization and as governors. You challenged us to radically rethink our role in this new economy, and you challenged us to join in rethinking federalism and how we might preempt federal preemption. You also challenged us to work with the private sector to create new ways of doing business consistent with our borderless economy, and you challenged us to an extraordinary task to save our state and local sales and use tax systems, and you challenged us also to bring our own states and practices into the new economy. And lastly, you challenged us to do this together amid the high tensions of a political year. Mike, when I think about what you've been through, I'm reminded sometimes of the story of El Cid. In some ways, you are the modern El Cid. You know, we were all helped you put on your armor. We helped get you up on the horse. We raised the gate, and we sent you out to do battle on our behalf. And while we stood behind the battlements, we prayed for you, we cheered you on, we stood with you, way behind you in many cases. But And I think of what you have accomplished. We're very, very pleased. I marvel at the many arrows that you have taken this year, and you've done that in many cases on our behalf, notwithstanding some of the political challenge you might have had in your own state as you spoke for us. I also know that you've given more than would be expected to this organization, and as a result of these accomplishments in your leadership, there's really no tribute that we can say other than just thank you very much. Before I go into a few details about the agenda for this year, I want to take the opportunity to recognize and thank John Engler for serving. John will be my vice chair. I will say that Tom Carper and Mike Levitt have really set an example of how chairs and vice chairs can work together, and I have been the beneficiary of that. And John, I just want to thank you. Our first work session or luncheon there I thought went very well, and I look forward not only to working with you, but to relying on your long expertise here as well, and I want to thank you for working as well. Let me also again thank our host Tom Ridge and the University, and Mr. President, thank you all. This has truly been tremendous. If I might, just a matter of personal honor, we're joined here today by U.S. Congressman Steny Hoyer, who, as you know, has worked with the association so closely as well. Let me also tell you, he was out of the country, flew in just to be here for this occasion. I told him it wasn't necessary, but he said he had wanted to do so. I thought, what a wonderful act of friendship. But then he also reminded me that he's actually my home congressman. He hopes I vote for him. But Steny Hoyer, thank you so very much. And let me lastly, in just recognition, thank my tremendous staff, both Elizabeth Pike, my Washington office, who has done such a phenomenal job, and who, this may be the last time you get a chance to see her when she's not just stressed out and nervous as anything because of the responsibilities that go with this position, as well as Major Riddick, my chief of staff, and if I'd ask each of them to stand for just a moment if I could as well. And anything anyone wants from me as chair of the NGA, anything whatsoever, feel absolutely free to call upon either one of them, and they'll take care of it. You know, Mike, we are very fortunate that your initiative focused on strengthening the states in the new economy. Your agenda is kind of a natural lead-in to the main points of emphasis for my year as chair. Sometimes it seems like this new economy kind of exploded on the scene, and we all, both in the public sector and the private sector, had to learn the new rules of the game. One new rule that we have learned is that high-tech companies that are the driving engine of this new economy, that traditionally the businesses have in fact chosen a location based primarily on tax structure and availability of workforce. But now these new businesses find that they can locate just about anywhere in the world, and they make their decision as much on the quality of the workforce and the quality of life that is offered. As governors, of course, it is our responsibility to provide the tools that our citizens need to be safe, to be well educated, to have good family supporting jobs, and to be happy with the place where they live. When we fail to pay attention to how we grow, when our growth patterns destroy the beauty of our communities, when those patterns of growth make our congestion worse, and when growth forces our citizens to pay higher and higher taxes to meet the large cost of sprawl, then it is time for some new thinking about how we use land in this nation. What I am proposing this coming year is that we give a serious look at the basic question of where do we grow from here. And most of you have the initial little pamphlet that outlines some of this discussion. And the question is to look beyond economic prosperity to community prosperity and well-being. How do we get there? It is my intention that we, as governors, share our best strategies for growth and quality of life. We can learn from each other, and we can share our ideas on how to safeguard and improve the quality of life that our citizens cherish. Americans are struggling to have enough time to spend with their families, from eating dinner with the whole family to attending a child's soccer game instead of sitting in traffic. These are the challenges that we as governors face because our citizens want us to help overcome these obstacles. This is about choosing how we grow, choosing how our communities look and how they function. It is about communities both in the urban centers and in our rural areas in all regions of all of our states. It is about communities that are vibrant and growing. It is about roads that are less congested. And it is about neighborhoods where citizens can walk to stores and restaurants and schools and work. And it is about a more efficient use of taxpayers' dollars to build infrastructure and to provide services. It is also about preserving the value of farmland, forest land, ranch land, and rangeland, and protecting the natural resources that make each of our areas unique places where people want to live. And it is the natural beauty that provides a little respite from our hurried lives. Large or small, urban or rural, east or west, all communities are facing similar problems associated with land use patterns. And the way we have grown has been a major challenge for the last couple of decades. In Georgia, for example, the federal government recently suspended financial assistance for new highway construction due to air quality concerns. And that is why Governor Barnes and the Georgia legislature established the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority within months of his taking office. That authority can, in fact, overturn local planning and transportation decisions. And in the West, in Colorado, for example, communities are taking charge of their own destiny and planning for their future as a result of Governor Owen's Smart Growth program. And like our program in Maryland, it is a specialized package of incentives, not mandates, that are geared towards saving natural landscapes and promoting stronger neighborhoods and building transportation for the future while providing economic opportunity for the entire state. And right here in Pennsylvania, where more than 25% of the farm acreage has been lost to other uses and more than 24,000 farms have disappeared since 1970, Governor Ridge and his Growing Greener initiative is making a difference. Governor Ridge spent 1999 listening to citizens all over Pennsylvania. He wanted to learn from them how and where they wanted to grow. And Governor Ridge's listening tour has been extremely effective. He is always putting he's already putting some of the citizens' plans into action. Additionally, Governor Huckabee's agenda for the Southern Governors Association this year is from fiber optics to fly fishing. And it's about the need to protect the very qualities that are also so unique to the South, even as we aggressively strive for economic prosperity. Governor, I remember when you were in Annapolis just recently and brought the members of the Southern Governors Association up there, the story. One of the questions that you posed is, why not come to Arkansas? And their response was, more than anything else, they were interested in the quality of education and the quality of life. And I thought about that, and I'll also tell you a quick story that I related to you. We had a similar experience with a company in Southern California that was looking to expand, and they met with people and leaders from North Carolina, from Virginia, from California, and from Maryland. And they made the decision to relocate their headquarters in Maryland and to bring about 1,200 jobs with them. And I had a conference, and I asked the owner of that company if he would talk to colleagues, the other high-tech individuals, about why. Now, I thought he was going to say because of the tremendous leadership of the governor, but he said he's at the point in his life that he can afford to enjoy life. He liked the Chesapeake Bay. He liked to sail. And that was one of the main reasons for moving to Maryland. He also, by the way, since he established his company there, has purchased a small number of sailboats, which he provides free to his employees as an incentive to have some of these high-tech employees locate in that company. What we should recognize in all this case is that this is a national phenomenon. In fact, my first speech outside of the NGA will be with the National Association of Counties just this Friday, in which they have asked me to speak about the role of smart growth as well. We should make this clear. Governors do not want to stop economic growth. We do not want to slow economic growth. In fact, much of our effort is about increasing economic growth. We're simply seeking smarter ways so that states can, in fact, stop subsidizing haphazard, costly land sprawl that eats up the countryside, destroys the quality of life, and costs us more. It is indeed a false dichotomy to say either you're going to be for the environment or you're going to be for the economy. We can and must do both really well, and so many of our states' success show that that is indeed possible. Governors uniformly agree that we need sound economic growth as the foundation for a strong state and a strong national economy, but we also are increasingly concerned about the challenges and unintended consequences of this new growth and of the sprawl. For next year's agenda, Governor Engler and I plan to share states' best practices for achieving better growth. To do that, we have invited 6 governors to join us on our Growth and Quality of Life Task Force: Governor Barnes of Georgia, Governor Whitman of New Jersey, Governor Kitzhaber of Oregon, Governor Owens of Colorado, Governor Hall of Arizona, Governor Allman of Rhode Island, and Governor Ventura of Minnesota have all agreed to serve. And during the year, we hope to hold as many as 3 regional policy forums on growth issues, including a land conservation forum to be co-hosted by Governor Vilsack of Iowa this spring. We will also establish a web page that will highlight policy reports and examples of best practices around the country. And finally, we'll be focusing on smart growth issues at our winter meeting in Washington, and particularly at our summer meeting in Providence. Let me also note that next year we will focus as well on the importance of higher education and the challenges of our institutions of higher education learning and the importance of that face in the new economy. The fact that Governor Ridge has proposed that we meet here at Penn State is an example of the role that higher education plays in this very crucial emerging economy. And also we heard the comments of Chairman Greenspan on this just today. The states will play a very crucial role in this area, and as we look at higher education, I think we have to ask some fundamental questions of those institutions. What is their vision of excellence? How much will it cost to achieve that vision? And how do we measure results and accountability for that vision? I'll be looking forward as we kick off a 3-year study by the NGA Center for Best Practices to focus on this need for lifelong learning as well as the changes in higher education. We'll be hearing more about this throughout the course of the year. Again, thank you for the opportunity to serve this wonderful organization in the past, and now as its chair, I appreciate it so very much. Thank you. Let me ask now, if we might, as we wrap this up, we're going to have a concluding press conference in room 109 of this building immediately as I put the gavel down. I'd ask all governors if they like to join us there. John Engler, of course, and Tom Ridge, and Mike Leavitt, and myself. Also, immediately after that press conference, the new executive committee and committee leadership will be meeting in room 204 of this building. And now it's my pleasure, the very first action of this, to adjourn the 92nd annual meeting of the NGA. Thank you very much.